I honestly intended to discuss the tariff that's being imposed on Trinidad today, but I need to address propaganda. Propaganda by a government is dangerous, and so I cannot allow the absolute exaggeration and nonsense and downright gimmicks to continue without addressing it. I see that the UNC PRO and of course the minister in the Ministry of Housing, who does not understand his place, speaking about crime is significantly down, and and I see junior minister talk about that is performance and blah blah blah. I mean, Kirk Megu is saying that crime is down 35.5% as compared to the same period last year, 2024. Let me address why that is actually no indication that we are seeing or will see a 2025 murder rate that in any way looks better than 2024. In 2023, the January murder rate, the murder total in January was 61. So in 2024, and the January murder total was 43. So the PNM would have said, we have a handle on crime. January 2023, January 2024, if you compare it, murders are significantly down. Except 2023, the yearly total was 576, and it ballooned in 2024 to 623. This is why in January, when the TTPS was boasting that crime was down by 44%, this is why when Fitzgerald Hines came in Parliament in January to speak about, why the state of emergency is successful and why we need an extension, and he quoted that the murder rate was down by 50%. This is why none of those figures translated to us genuinely being safer by the end of 2024. So, capturing these bits of information, I used to say it about PNM, it's lying with data. You are using data conveniently, not putting it into context. I see people do that with the Bible all the time. They pull a one-liner that suits their agenda. And if you just take the whole verse into context and you read some paragraphs before and you read the whole chapter, you'd understand that the verse means nothing. Nothing compared to what you are trying to make it mean. And so, Philip Alexander and Kirk Megu need to be open and honest with the country. What we need is for the UNC to stop playing gimmicks. And let me help the UNC out. Let me play the PRO's role for just a little bit. I was doing some digging because guess what? The TTPS website does not have month-to-month figures for 2025. So citizens had to kind of do some real digging. And just using various newspaper articles, I was able to figure out what was the murder rate for the 110 days that PNM would have been in office in 2025. And it turns out the murder rate would have been 1.15 murders per day. You're looking at 127 murders in total for from January to April 28th. And then, I could only figure out August 4th, and that's using Kirk's figure of 231 murders. So I said, okay, and then there was an article that said 81 murders since UNC in power. So, figuring it out, doing some math, I was able to come up with, for 98 days, I could only go to August 4th because that's what I have. So for 98 days, there was 104 murders under the UNC administration. So that actually takes the murder rate to 1.06 murders a day. So there was a drop. Kudos to UNC. See, UNC, I can be fair. I'm not just hating because of whatever y'all think. I'm holding you to account. So there is no need to balloon and talk about performance and whatever. Now, first of all, that 7.83% is not good enough. But I will say that it is trending in the right direction. And that is the mature conversation that we should be seeing from the government. The government must be transparent. You know, that was a word that Kamla Persad-Bissessar used in January when she contributed to the debate when PNM needed an extension. She said, I will support the extension of the state of emergency, but it must be done with transparency and accountability. That's all we are asking for. The citizens of Trinidad and Tobago do not expect the UNC to fix 10 years of PNM's incompetence. But what we want is more than blame PNM and, well, PNM do worse, and so that's why we could do this, and have Khadija talk about URP corruption even though the People's Partnership spent double what PNM spent, and we're just seeing a set of rah, and we're not actually seeing sober-minded, mature, accountable, transparent dialogue. That's what we need. What we need is for the Minister of Homeland Security to have the figures that I have. I'm sure, I am certain there is no one in the UNC's government that did that work, that was able to say, guys, do we have any real evidence that what we are doing is even making a dent? The point is, there has been a 7.83% decrease in the murder rate. Time will tell whether that makes sense or not, whether that's going to result in any long-term change in crime, because as I said, we could say that there was a 44% drop in crime in the first quarter of 2025. It doesn't necessarily translate to long-term, safety, long-term solutions. It doesn't necessarily translate in long-term results. That's the word I'm looking for. But this is to say, we need the propaganda to be a thing of the past. We need our politics and our politicians to mature past stupidity about, and you were not in government for the first half of 2025. So what are you talking about? It's just so absurd and so stupid, these memes and infographics, and it is just propaganda. And we have had enough of PNM propaganda. We do not need UNC propaganda. It is time for our politics to mature.